The morning started like any other morning on Council Station Bright Hope. Jake Morrison sat in his small office reviewing maintenance reports while drinking his third cup of coffee. Outside his window, dozens of alien species moved through the corridors going about their daily business. The Zentari with their multiple arms carried datapads and packages. The tall Draventhi floated past with their crystalline bodies catching the station lights. The small furry pibblings scurried between the legs of larger species, chattering in their high-pitched voices. Jake had worked here for 12 years now, and he knew every corner of this place. His communicator beeped. It was Lucy Baker from the engineering deck, calling about a problem with the air recyclers in Section 7. Jake told her he would handle it and finished his coffee. This was his life now. Fix problems, file reports, keep the station running. He was good at his job. All humans were good at their jobs. That was why the council kept them around, but something had changed recently. Jake felt it in the way the Zentari station master Kelnoth barely acknowledged him in meetings anymore. He saw it in how his budget request got denied while other departments received immediate approval. 3 months ago, he had submitted a proposal for upgrading the aging water purification system. The proposal sat in someone's inbox gathering digital dust. Last week, the Draventhi medical wing got brand new equipment without even asking for it. Across the galaxy, the same pattern repeated itself. On the agricultural world Terra Nova, farm manager Betty Cook watched as the council denied permits for human families to settle on the northern continent. The land sat empty. No other species wanted to farm in those conditions. Too cold, they said. Too much work, but humans would have done it. Humans always did the hard work. In the Outer Rim, cargo ship captain Ryan Cole delivered his weekly shipment of medical supplies to Station Hope. The Zentari dockmaster made him wait 6 hours for clearance, while 3 other ships got immediate docking permission. Ryan sat in his cockpit reading a book and trying not to feel angry. Getting angry never helped. Humans learned that lesson quickly in council space. On Earth, President Linda Hayes sat in her office reading reports from every corner of council territory. The reports painted a clear picture. Humanity was useful but not valued. Humans maintained the jump gates that made faster-than-light travel possible. Humans staffed the hospitals on frontier worlds where no other species wanted to work. Humans managed the waste recycling plants and the water purification systems and the atmospheric processors. Humans did the jobs that kept civilization running. But when humans asked for a seat on the council, they got rejected. When humans applied for colony permits, they got denied. When humans requested fair trade agreements, they got ignored. For 70 years, humanity played by the rules and worked hard and asked politely. For 70 years, the council treated them like useful servants instead of equals. Linda made her decision. She called a meeting with her cabinet. Secretary of State Greg Palmer came in first, followed by Defense Secretary Karen White and Technology Secretary Kevin Morgan. They sat around the table in the secure conference room and waited. Linda spoke carefully. The room was swept for bugs every morning, but she still kept her voice low. She told them about her plan. Humanity would leave council space, not with threats or demands or angry speeches. Just quietly pack up and go home. Every human worker would complete their current contracts and then return to Earth. No extensions. No negotiations. Just leave. Greg looked worried. He asked about the economic impact. Humans made good money working in council space. Those jobs supported millions of families back on Earth. Linda nodded. She knew the cost. But she also knew the cost of staying. Earth had resources. Earth had technology. Earth had 5 billion people who could build their own future, instead of maintaining someone else's civilization. It would be hard at first, but humanity would survive. Humans always survived. Karen asked about military response. Would the council try to force humans to stay? Would there be conflict? Linda said she hoped not. The plan depended on everything looking normal until the last moment. Humans would fulfill every contract perfectly. They would train their replacements if asked. They would leave detailed instruction manuals. Everything legal and proper. The council could not accuse humanity of breaking any rules, and by the time the council realized what was happening, it would be too late to stop it. Kevin smiled. He understood the deeper implications. Humans built most of the critical infrastructure in council space. Humans designed the systems and wrote the code and understood how everything connected together. The council thought they could easily replace human workers. They would learn otherwise. The orders went out through encrypted channels. Human ships carried the messages to every corner of Council territory. Captains opened sealed packages and read their instructions. Workers received coded emails that looked like ordinary family news. Colony administrators got quiet phone calls late at night. Within 1 week, every human in Council space knew the plan. Jake Morrison read his message 3 times. Return to Earth in 6 months. Complete all current projects. Train replacements if requested. Leave everything in working order. He sat back in his chair and looked around his office. 12 years he had worked here. 12 years of fixing problems and improving systems and making this station better, and in 6 months he would walk away from all of it. He felt relieved. He had not realized how tired he was until now. Tired of being overlooked, tired of watching less qualified aliens get promoted above him, tired of working twice as hard for half the recognition. He was going home. Lucy Baker knocked on his door. She had gotten the same message. They talked quietly about their plans. Lucy wanted to open a consulting business on Earth. She had skills that would be valuable. Jake thought he might teach engineering at a university, or maybe just take a year off and travel, see Earth properly for the first time in over a decade. The station intercom called Jake to the engineering deck. Another problem needed fixing. Jake stood up and grabbed his toolkit. 6 more months of this. Then freedom. He walked through the corridors nodding at familiar faces. The Zentari merchants who always complained about the temperature settings. The pibbling cleaning crew who sang while they worked. The Draventhi security officers who thought they were so important. In 6 months they would all still be here. But the humans would be gone, and the station would learn exactly how much it depended on the quiet workers who kept everything running. 3 months passed, and the humans kept working like nothing had changed. They filed their reports on time, and fixed the problems that came up and smiled politely at everyone. Station Master Kelnoth never noticed that Chief Engineer Danny Fletcher was training the new Zentari maintenance crew with unusual thoroughness. He never wondered why Danny insisted on written documentation for every single system. It just seemed like typical human efficiency. On Medical Station Sanctuary Prime, Dr. Amy Preston spent her last weeks creating detailed procedure manuals. She recorded video guides for every piece of equipment in the surgical wing. The Hivema Dr. Zixal who would replace her seemed confident. Zixal had 4 thinking minds working in parallel, and decades of medical experience. Amy showed Zixal the human-designed surgical systems and explained the controls. Zixal nodded with all 4 eye stalks and said it looked simple enough. Amy did not argue. She just made sure all her documentation was complete and filed properly. In 2 weeks she would board a transport back to Earth. Whether Zixal actually understood the equipment was no longer her problem. The first real crack appeared on Outpost Tysus, exactly 1 week after Danny Fletcher left. Station Master Vrektal was in his office reviewing cargo manifests when his assistant came running in. The waste recycler in the lower decks was making a terrible noise. Smoke was coming from the vents. The automated safety systems had shut down 3 sections to prevent contamination. Vrektal called the maintenance department. The new Zentari chief engineer Polmath arrived with his team. They stood in front of the waste recycler looking confused. The control panel was labeled in human standard technical language. The translation software turned it into nonsense. Words like pressure differential and catalytic converter and biohazard containment became meaningless strings of syllables. Polmath tried to open the maintenance access panel. It would not open. There was a keypad lock with a code that Danny had never mentioned. Polmath tried to override it with his master access credentials. The system rejected them. Apparently the waste recycler was on a separate security system that only human engineers had access to. The recycler kept making noise. The smoke got thicker. Vrektal evacuated 6 more sections and sent an emergency message to the nearest Council engineering support station. They said they would send a specialist in 4 days. 4 days of mounting garbage with nowhere to process it. 4 days of sections sealed off and crew members cramped into smaller spaces. On the 5th day, a Draventhi engineer arrived. She looked at the recycler for 3 hours and admitted she had no idea how it worked. The design was too different from standard Council systems. She suggested they contact the human who built it. Vrektal tried to reach Danny Fletcher. The communication went to an automated message saying Danny was unavailable and would respond when possible. Danny never responded. Vrektal tried contacting Earth directly. The Council liaison office said they would pass along the message. Nothing happened. After 2 weeks, the recycler finally broke down completely. The station had to hire an expensive emergency barge to haul away accumulated waste. The cost was enormous. Fractal filed a complaint with council administration about the humans leaving without proper transition support. His complaint joined 50 others that arrived the same week. At Sanctuary Prime, Dr. Zixal faced the emergency. A Zentari patient came in with severe internal bleeding from an industrial accident. The surgery was routine. Zixal had performed it hundreds of times, but the human surgical system would not respond to Zixal's commands. The interface kept flashing error messages in human technical language that made no sense even with translation. Zixal tried to switch to manual controls. The system would not allow it. Apparently, there were safety protocols that required certain automated sequences. Zixal could not figure out how to override them. The patient kept bleeding. Zixal finally had to transfer the patient to an older HFY surgical unit. By the time they completed the transfer and started surgery, the patient had lost too much blood. He died on the table. 2 more patients died that week from delays, caused by equipment that doctors could not operate properly. Dr. Amy Preston's detailed manuals sat in a database somewhere, but nobody knew where to find them. Her video guides were recorded in human speech patterns that the translation software mangled. What seemed clear to human ears became confused gibberish to everyone else. The Jumpgate network started having problems in the 4th month. The gates themselves kept working, but the traffic control systems became unreliable. Ships waited hours for clearance that should have taken minutes. The carefully orchestrated dance of thousands of vessels moving through hyperspace corridors started falling apart. Captain Ryan Cole was one of the last human traffic controllers still on duty. At Hub Station 7, he watched his HFY replacement Kixon struggle with the flowcharts and timing sequences. Kixon had 4 minds that could process multiple data streams simultaneously. But traffic control was not about processing speed. It was about intuition and experience and understanding how ship captains thought. A cargo hauler requested emergency priority clearance because of engine problems. Standard protocol said to route it through Gate 3. But Ryan knew that Gate 3 was handling a bulk transport convoy that could not maneuver quickly. He routed the cargo hauler through Gate 7 instead, even though it added 10 minutes to the trip. The hauler's engines failed 2 minutes after it cleared the gate. If Ryan had sent it through Gate 3, it would have collided with the convoy while trying to make emergency repairs. Kixan saw what Ryan did and asked why he deviated from protocol. Ryan tried to explain about understanding ship capabilities and captain personalities and traffic flow patterns. Kixan's 4 minds computed the variables and said the protocol was statistically optimal. Ryan shrugged and said statistics did not account for everything. The next week, Ryan left for Earth. Kixan took over traffic control. For 3 days, everything went smoothly. On the 4th day, 2 ships nearly collided at the Vortan gate because Kixan followed the protocol exactly and did not account for a captain who panicked under pressure and made an unexpected maneuver. Emergency thrusters prevented the collision, but the close call made headlines across Council space. More incidents followed. A mining operation on the ice world Frostholm shut down because no other species wanted to work in those conditions. The Zentari miners lasted 2 weeks before requesting transfer. The facility sat empty with valuable minerals still in the ground. An automated farm complex on Verde Prime stopped producing food. The systems were too complicated and the instruction manuals assumed knowledge that only human agricultural specialists possessed. The local Pibbling administrators called for help. Nobody came. The crops started dying in the fields. Chief Logistics Officer Karen White sat in her office on Earth watching the reports come in. She had spreadsheets tracking every system failure and every delayed shipment and every request for human assistance. The pattern was clear. Council civilization was built on human labor and human expertise. Remove the humans and everything started falling apart. Her assistant, Peter Grant, brought in the latest numbers. Medical supplies backing up in warehouses because nobody understood the distribution systems. Mining equipment sitting idle because nobody wanted to maintain it. Waste management failing on 30 stations. Food shortages developing in the outer colonies. Karen looked at the data and felt no satisfaction. She had friends still living in Council space. She knew people would suffer because of these failures. But Earth had tried for 70 years to be recognized as equals. The Council chose to see humans as servants. Now they would learn what servants actually did. President Linda Hayes called for an update. Karen sent her the reports. Linda read them carefully and asked if Karen thought the council understood the situation yet. Karen said probably not. The council leadership was used to problems being solved quickly by human workers. They still expected someone to fix everything. They did not realize the fixers were gone. The emergency council session was called on a cold morning at Archimedes Station. Supreme Chancellor Vormix of the Draventhi Empire floated at the head of the massive circular chamber. His crystalline body reflected the lights in sharp angles that made him look even more intimidating than usual. Around him sat representatives from the 12 major council species. The Zentari occupied their section with multiple arms folded in displeasure. The Hivema delegation stood in perfect formation, thinking in synchronized harmony. The small pibelings clustered together nervously, aware that something serious was happening. Ambassador Lisa Chen walked into the chamber alone. Her footsteps echoed on the polished floor. She wore a simple gray suit and carried only a small data pad. Behind her, the massive doors sealed shut with a heavy thud that seemed to emphasize how isolated she was. One human surrounded by hundreds of aliens who were angry at her species. She reached the speaker's platform in the center of the chamber and stood calmly waiting. The platform was designed to make speakers feel small and exposed. Lisa had been here many times before. She knew all the psychological tricks built into the architecture. She refused to let it bother her. Chancellor Vormix's voice rang out across the chamber. His words came in the Draventhi clicking language, but the translation system rendered them into human speech instantly. He spoke about duty and responsibility and the obligations that came with being part of galactic civilization. He talked about the chaos spreading across council space, station failures and medical emergencies and transportation delays. He listed statistics about economic losses and productivity declines. Then he got to the point. Humanity's withdrawal from council space was causing unacceptable damage. The humans had occupied essential positions, and their departure was tantamount to sabotage. The council demanded an immediate reversal of the withdrawal policy. Human workers must return to their previous positions. Contract extensions would be mandatory to compensate for the disruption and transition costs. Lisa listened patiently. When Vormix finally finished talking, she took a slow breath and looked around the chamber. She could see the anger in their alien faces. The Zentari Trade Minister Kixara was practically vibrating with rage. The Hivema coordinator looked coldly calculating. Even the peaceful Sorrenti ambassador seemed disturbed, though his old eyes studied her with something that might have been understanding. Lisa spoke clearly. Her voice carried through the chamber without shouting. She said that humanity had fulfilled every contract according to the exact terms that the council had written. Humans provided the proper notice periods for contract terminations. Every worker had documented their systems and trained their replacements when asked. All equipment was left in working order. There had been no sabotage and no violation of any agreement. She paused to let that sink in. Then she continued. Humans were simply returning home. This was not a negotiation or a labor dispute. It was a decision. The council had made it clear over 70 years that humans were workers but not partners. Humans had accepted that assessment. Now humans were withdrawing from council territory to focus on their own civilization. Trade Minister Kixara could not contain herself anymore. She slammed 3 of her 6 arms on her console, creating a thunderous bang. Her translator struggled to keep up with her rapid, angry speech. She said humans were being childish and spiteful. They were abandoning their duties because of hurt feelings. The council had given humanity opportunities to work across the galaxy. Humans should be grateful for the chance to participate in advanced civilization. Lisa's expression did not change. She said humans were grateful for the experience. They had learned a great deal. Now they were applying those lessons at home. If the council wanted to interpret that as spite, then that was their choice. A Hivema speaker stood and asked in perfectly synchronized 4-part harmony what exactly humanity wanted. There must be demands. There must be a negotiation position. Species did not simply walk away from economic opportunities without wanting something in return. Lisa shook her head. She explained that Earth was not making demands. Earth did not want anything from the council. Human workers were going home because they chose to. What the council did in response was entirely up to the council. Chancellor Vormix's crystalline body flashed with agitation. He said this was unacceptable. The Council could not allow one species to disrupt galactic civilization simply because they felt unappreciated. He hinted at economic sanctions. He mentioned trade restrictions. His words suggested that military options were being discussed, though he did not say so directly. Lisa met his gaze calmly. She asked if the Council was threatening to force humans to work against their will. She asked if the Council planned to violate the freedom of movement that was supposedly guaranteed to all species. She said these things would look very bad in the historical records. The chamber fell silent. The implications hung in the air like a bad smell. If the Council used force to make humans work, they would expose themselves as slavers. Every minor species watching this situation would understand that Council membership meant servitude, not partnership. The political damage would be enormous, but Vormix was desperate. Systems were failing across Council space. The economy was starting to crack. Medical facilities could not function properly. Transportation networks were breaking down. He needed humans to come back, and he needed it to happen quickly. He tried a different approach. He offered incentives. Earth would receive increased trade access. Human goods would get preferential tariffs. Colony permits would be approved for 3 new worlds. It was a generous offer. It was more than the Council had offered humanity in decades. Lisa looked at him with something like pity. She said the offers were interesting, but Earth was not interested. Humans had spent 70 years asking politely for those exact things. The Council had denied every request. Now the Council wanted to offer them as bribes to make humans come back. The answer was no. Vormix's voice rose. He demanded to know what humans wanted. There had to be something. Everyone wanted something. Lisa smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. She said humans wanted to go home. That was all. Earth had everything humans needed. Natural resources and advanced technology, and 5 billion people ready to build their own future. Humans did not need Council space, but Council space apparently needed humans. She let that statement echo through the chamber. Then she spoke again. She said if the Council wanted to discuss a real partnership between equals, then Earth might be interested in talking. But if the Council just wanted servants to maintain their civilization, then humans would stay home. The choice belonged to the Council. Before anyone could respond, Lisa turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed again in the shocked silence. Behind her, the Council representatives looked at each other, uncertain what to do next. They had expected humans to negotiate. They had expected demands and compromise. Instead, they got a simple rejection and an even simpler message. Fix your own problems. The doors opened and Lisa walked through them. As they sealed behind her, she allowed herself a small smile. The meeting had gone exactly as President Hayes predicted. The Council was used to being in control. They were used to other species needing them. They had no idea how to handle a species that simply walked away. Back on Earth, President Hayes watched the recording of the Council session. Her advisors sat around the table discussing what would happen next. Secretary Palmer thought the Council might back down. Secretary White worried they might escalate to military threats. Secretary Morgan seemed confident that the infrastructure problems would force the Council to negotiate seriously. Hayes listened to them all. Then she made her decision. Earth would wait. No more messages to the Council. No more explanations. Just silence. The ball was in the Council's court now. They could accept humanity as equals, or they could try to force humans back. Either way, Earth was ready for what came next. General Paul Harris stood in the Earth System Defense Command, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The holographic screen showed the inner solar system in perfect detail. Mars hung in its orbit, showing the ice caps and red deserts. The asteroid belt sparkled with mining stations, and just beyond Mars' orbit sat 40 Council warships in a formation that looked disturbingly aggressive. The ships had arrived 6 hours ago without any prior warning. No diplomatic message. No request for permission to enter human space. They just appeared through a jump point and took up positions. The formation was clearly meant to intimidate. Dreadnoughts in the center with their massive weapon arrays, fast attack cruisers on the flanks, support vessels behind carrying supplies for an extended operation. Paul's second-in-command, Colonel Helen Price, stood beside him reviewing tactical assessments. She pointed out that the Council fleet had their weapons powered up but not locked on any targets. They were ready to fight but had not committed to fighting yet. It was a show of force, a threat. The communication came through exactly on schedule. Chancellor Vormix appeared on the main screen. His crystalline body looked even more angular and sharp than usual. His voice carried authority but also desperation. He said the council had been patient. They had offered incentives. They had tried diplomacy. Now it was time for humanity to understand the serious consequences of their actions. Vormix laid out the terms. Human workers would return to their previous positions within 30 days. Contract extensions would be mandatory for a minimum of 5 years to ensure stability. Earth would accept a council oversight committee to monitor human labor deployments. Failure to comply would result in economic sanctions. All human trade routes would be closed. All human assets in council space would be seized. If necessary, the council was prepared to use military force to ensure compliance. The transmission ended. Paul looked at his team. They were all thinking the same thing. The council was actually threatening war over labor disputes. It would be almost funny if the situation was not so dangerous. President Hayes convened an emergency cabinet meeting. The secure conference room filled quickly. Defense Secretary Karen White came in looking grim. Secretary of State Greg Palmer seemed worried. Technology Secretary Kevin Morgan carried his datapad and looked strangely calm. Ambassador Lisa Chen joined by video link from her quarters at the embassy station. Hayes asked for options. Karen said Earth's defense fleet could fight if necessary. Humans had been quietly upgrading their military during the years of working in council space. Human ships were smaller but faster than council vessels. Human weapons technology had advanced significantly. A battle would be costly, but Earth could defend itself. Greg argued against military confrontation. Even if Earth won a battle, the consequences would be terrible. Trade would end completely. Humans still living in council space would become hostages. Earth would be isolated and surrounded by hostile species. Kevin asked to speak. He stood and connected his datapad to the conference room display. He brought up schematics and code sequences. He explained something that made everyone in the room go silent. He said that every major system in council space was human-designed and human-built. The jump gate networks, the medical equipment, the waste recyclers, the atmospheric processors, the traffic control systems, everything. And all of it had integrated safety protocols to prevent accidents and system failures. Those safety protocols required human authorization codes to override emergency shutdowns. Karen asked what he meant by emergency shutdowns. Kevin explained that if a jump gate detected certain anomalies, it would automatically shut down to prevent catastrophic failures. If a medical system sensed dangerous operating conditions, it would lock itself to protect patients. If waste recyclers reached critical levels, they would enter safe mode. All standard engineering practice, all designed to save lives and prevent disasters, but those same safety features could be activated remotely. A human engineer with the proper authorization codes could tell a jump gate that dangerous anomalies existed, could tell a medical system that operating conditions were unsafe, could tell a waste recycler that it had reached critical levels. The systems would shut down automatically following their own safety protocols. Hayes asked if he was suggesting they weaponize the infrastructure. Kevin shook his head. He said the safety systems already existed. Earth did not need to weaponize anything. Earth just needed to activate protocols that were already in place. From the Council's perspective, it would look like cascading system failures. Only humans would know the truth. The room stayed quiet while everyone processed this information. It was brilliant and terrible at the same time. Earth could cripple Council civilization without firing a single shot. Without destroying anything, just by making their own systems follow safety protocols that humans had built in years ago. Lisa spoke from the video screen. She said using this option would prove the Council's worst fears, that humans had always been a threat. That human infrastructure was a trap waiting to spring, even if Earth won this confront. The long-term consequences would be severe. Hayes nodded. She understood the risks, but she also understood what was at stake. The Council was threatening military action against Earth, against human families and human cities. If Vormix thought he could intimidate humanity into servitude, he needed to learn otherwise. She made her decision. Earth would send one message to the Council. A simple information package. No threats, no demands. Just technical documentation showing every safety protocol in every major system across Council space, and a brief explanation that if the Council fleet fired on Earth, those safety protocols would activate automatically. Kevin prepared the message. It took him 20 minutes to compile the documentation. He included code samples and system diagrams. He made sure everything was clear and verifiable. The Council's own engineers would be able to confirm that everything he said was true. The message was sent. The Council fleet received it. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Paul watched the tactical display, expecting weapons lock warnings any moment. His fleet commanders were ready. Human defense satellites powered up. Ground-based defense systems went to full alert. Then Chancellor Vormix appeared on screen again. His crystalline body looked duller somehow, less sharp. His voice came through without the previous authority. He asked if Earth was bluffing. Hayes appeared on screen to respond personally. She said Earth never bluffed. The safety protocols were real. The authorization codes were real. If the Council wanted to verify this, they could ask their own engineers to examine the systems. Everything was documented and verifiable. Vormix asked what would happen if the Council fleet stood down. Hayes said nothing would happen. The safety protocols would remain inactive. Earth had no desire to hurt anyone, but if the Council fleet opened fire, then Earth would defend itself using every tool available. There was a long pause. Paul could see ships moving on the tactical display. The Council fleet was changing formation. Weapons were powering down. The aggressive posture was shifting to something more neutral. Then Vormix gave the order. One of the Council dreadnoughts fired a single shot. Not at Earth, not at Mars. It targeted an unmanned Earth monitoring station in deep space. The station was basically a weather satellite. Its destruction meant nothing strategically, but it was technically an attack on human property. Vormix's message came through clearly. The Council would not be intimidated by threats. They would not accept human demands. This was a demonstration that the Council was serious. Hayes looked at Kevin. Kevin looked at Paul. Paul nodded. They all understood what happened next. Hayes gave a simple order. Activate the protocols. Captain Steve Palmer sat in a secure facility deep under Colorado. His workstation connected to satellite uplinks that reached across the galaxy. He had spent the last 3 days preparing for this moment. He had verified all the authorization codes. He had checked and double-checked every system connection. He knew exactly which protocols to activate and in what sequence. He entered the first code. A jump gate in Sector 7 received the signal. Its safety systems registered dangerous spatial anomalies. The gate shut down following standard emergency procedures. Ships waiting to use the gate suddenly found themselves stranded. Steve entered the second code. Medical stations across the frontier received warnings about contaminated surgical equipment. The systems locked themselves following patient safety protocols. Doctors trying to perform emergency procedures found their equipment unresponsive. Steve entered the third code. Waste recyclers on 50 stations detected critical pressure levels. They entered safe mode and stopped processing. Within minutes, toxic waste began backing up in the systems. He kept entering codes, one after another, calmly and methodically. Each code activated safety protocols that humans had built into the infrastructure years ago. Nothing was destroyed. Nothing was damaged. The systems just stopped working because they believed they had to stop working to prevent disasters. Across Council space civilization began shutting down. The chaos began. Within minutes and spread like wildfire across Council space. Jump gates went offline, stranding thousands of ships in normal space, far from their destinations. The merchant vessel Golden Prophet found itself stuck 3 light years from the nearest station, with only 2 weeks of food supplies. The passenger liner Star Dream carried 5,000 travelers who suddenly faced an unexpected delay of months instead of days. Medical stations lost critical systems in the middle of emergency procedures. On Sanctuary Prime, the same hospital where Dr. Amy Preston once worked now faced catastrophe. 3 patients were in surgery when the equipment shut down. Doctors scrambled to move them to older backup systems, but 1 patient died during the transfer. Another hospital on the frontier world, Kelvin's Rest, lost its entire atmospheric processing system. The staff had 40 minutes to evacuate before the air became toxic. Waste recyclers stopped working on dozens of stations. Within hours, the backup systems were overwhelmed. Station commanders ordered evacuations. Tens of thousands of people grabbed emergency supplies and crowded into evacuation ships. Children cried. Parents tried to stay calm. The orderly civilization of Council space descended into panic. Automated farm systems locked down across agricultural worlds. The growing season was at a critical point. Crops needed water and nutrients and pest control. Without the automated systems working, the crops would die in the fields. Food supplies that fed billions of people were suddenly at risk. Emergency channels flooded with distress calls. Station masters begged for help. Ship captains reported being stranded. Hospital administrators sent desperate messages about failing life support. The Council's communication network could barely handle the volume of crisis. Reports coming in from every corner of civilized. Space Chancellor Vormix sat in his command center aboard the flagship, watching the reports scroll across his screens. His crystalline body had lost all its sharp brightness. He looked dull and old. Around him, his military advisors argued about response options. Some wanted to press the attack on Earth. Others insisted they needed to recall the fleet to deal with emergencies at home. Trade Minister Kixara's home station was one of those being evacuated. She sent frantic messages demanding immediate action. The HFY coordinator reported that 4 of their colony worlds were facing food shortages. Even the peaceful Sorrenti ambassador sent a quiet note saying his people were suffering. The Council fleet began receiving recall orders. Dreadnoughts that had been positioned to threaten Earth now turned away to help with evacuations. Attack cruisers rushed toward stranded ships to provide emergency supplies. The threatening military formation fell apart as each ship responded to desperate calls from their home territories. Vormix knew he had lost. The demonstration of power had backfired completely. He had thought destroying one small monitoring station would show Earth that the Council was serious. Instead, it had triggered a cascading disaster that proved Earth held all the real power. The quiet humans who maintained civilization had built kill switches into everything, and the Council had never even suspected. He opened a communication channel to Earth. President Hayes appeared on screen. She looked calm and professional. Behind her, Vormix could see her advisors. They all looked calm, too. They had known exactly what would happen. They had planned for this. Vormix's voice came out quiet and defeated. He asked Hayes to stop the attack. He said the Council understood the message. There was no need for more suffering. Hayes spoke carefully. She said this was not an attack. Earth had activated safety protocols to demonstrate a point. If Earth wanted to attack, the damage would be permanent. Instead, the systems were simply in safe mode. Everything could be restored. She paused and then continued. She said Earth would restore all systems immediately, but first the Council needed to understand something. For 70 years, humanity had maintained the infrastructure that kept Council civilization running. Humans did not build those systems as weapons. They built them to help. They included safety protocols to protect people. The fact that those same protocols could be used defensively was never the intention. But the Council's decision to threaten military force had changed everything. Earth would restore the systems this time, but the Council needed to decide what kind of relationship they wanted with humanity. If the Council wanted partners, then Earth was willing to discuss terms. If the Council wanted servants, then Earth would stay home, and the Council could maintain their own infrastructure from now on. Vormix asked what terms Earth wanted. Hayes listed them clearly. Full Council membership with voting rights, equal representation in all Council decisions, territory expansion rights matching any other species, patent PR, protection for human technology and fair compensation for systems already in use, and formal apologies to the families who lost loved ones due to negligence during the transition period. Vormix listened to the demands. They were reasonable. They were what humanity should have received decades ago. He asked what would happen if the Council refused. Hayes answered simply, then humanity would stay on Earth. The systems would remain shut down. The Council could hire new engineers and learn to maintain everything themselves. It might take years. It might take decades. Many people would suffer. But eventually the Council would figure it out. Or they would collapse. Either way, it would not be Earth's problem anymore. She leaned forward slightly. She said Earth would be fine. Humans had resources and technology and 5 billion motivated people. Earth could build its own civilization and trade with non-Council species. Humans did not need the Council, but the Council very clearly needed humans. The choice was Vormix's to make. Vormix looked at his advisors. They all knew the answer. The Council could not survive without human expertise, not quickly enough to prevent massive suffering. Pride was not worth the cost. He turned back to the screen and accepted Earth's terms. Hayes nodded. She gave an order. In Colorado, Captain Steve Palmer began entering restoration codes. Across Council space, the safety protocols deactivated. Jump gates came back online. Medical equipment returned to normal operation. Waste recyclers resumed processing. Atmospheric systems started working again. The entire shutdown had lasted only 6 hours, but it felt like an eternity to those caught in it. Ships stranded in deep space suddenly had routes home. Hospitals could perform surgeries again. Stations being evacuated received all clear signals. The panic subsided slowly as people realized the crisis was over. 3 days later, the Galactic Council convened for a historic vote. The chamber was packed. Every species sent representatives. The galleries were full of observers. News services broadcast the proceedings across the galaxy. The vote was on full council membership for humanity, equal status with all rights and responsibilities. The motion required unanimous approval from all 12 major species. One by one, the representatives voted. The Zentari voted yes, though Trade Minister Kixara looked unhappy about it. The Hivema voted yes with their synchronized precision. The Piblings voted yes enthusiastically. Even the proud Draventhi voted yes, though Vormix's voice was quiet when he cast the vote. The motion passed unanimously. Humanity was now a full member of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Lisa Chen took her new seat in the council chamber. Not at the speaker's platform in the center where she had stood alone facing hostile aliens. Now she sat among the representatives as an equal. Her chair was positioned between the Sorrenti ambassador and a Zentari delegate. The old Sorrenti leaned over and whispered congratulations. Lisa thanked him quietly. Vormix called the session to order. He announced that the council would form committees to address the infrastructure problems and establish new protocols for system maintenance. Human engineers would be invited to participate as partners, not servants. Compensation packages would be negotiated fairly. The whole relationship was being rebuilt from the ground up. Back on Earth, President Hayes stood at a podium addressing the press. Reporters shouted questions about the crisis and the military confrontation. Hayes answered calmly. She said humanity had never wanted conflict. Earth simply wanted recognition and respect. Now that the council had provided both, things could move forward positively. A reporter asked if she was concerned about future retaliation. Hayes smiled slightly. She said the council had learned an important lesson. You cannot threaten the people who built your civilization. The infrastructure that humanity created was always meant to help, but it could also defend, and now everyone knew it. In Colorado, Captain Steve Palmer closed down his workstation. His part in the crisis was finished. He walked out of the secure facility into bright sunshine. The sky was blue and clear. Birds sang in the trees. Life on Earth continued peacefully, while the galaxy processed what had happened. Jake Morrison received a message from President Hayes' office. They were recruiting experienced engineers to return to council space under the new agreements. The pay was excellent. The contracts included strong protections. Most importantly, the work would be recognized and valued properly. Jake thought about it carefully and decided to accept. He missed the stars. But this time he would go back as a partner, not a servant. Dr. Amy Preston got a similar offer. Sanctuary Prime Hospital wanted her back. They offered triple her previous salary and a position as chief of surgery. They even agreed to send their entire medical staff for training on human systems. Amy accepted. She had patients who needed her, but now they would respect her expertise. All across Earth, humans made similar decisions. Some chose to return to council space. Others decided to stay home and work on Earth's own expansion. Both choices were good. Both were respected. That was the difference. Humanity finally had real choices. The galaxy learned an uncomfortable truth that day. Power did not always come from weapons or threats. Sometimes power came from knowing how things worked, from building the systems that everyone depended on, from being patient and competent and indispensable. Humanity had been all of those things for 70 years. They had maintained civilization quietly while the council took credit and gave orders. When respect was not freely given, humans simply left, and the galaxy discovered what happened when you pushed the wrong people too far. The quiet ones who fixed everything had shown they could break everything just as easily. They chose not to. They chose restoration over destruction, partnership over revenge. But no one would forget the lesson. The galaxy would be more careful from now on about who they took for granted